Yo, what's good, YouTube? This is Jake from TNJ, and welcome back to the New York Jets franchise here on Madden 21. Now, in Season 1, we drafted a couple of good rookies in Alex Hopkins and also Brad Matthews, along with some other guys like Tariq Macklin, who you saw last week ran for a rushing touchdown as a tight end. We have some dynamic guys on this roster. But in this episode, we want to look at the future. Now, in the offseason, we were presented with the question of should we pick up Sam Darnold's fifth-year option? We chose to decline it. So that means that this is Sam Darnold's final year under contract with the Jets. If we want to bring him back, we can always re-sign him, but we might be looking at a quarterback of the future in this year's draft. Now, a lot of guys are actually having expiring contracts, including Braxton Berrios, who has been pretty good on the outside, obviously not big time numbers, but Jamison Crowder has become a priority for us. You can already see that he is a dynamic playmaker in the slot. But at tight end, we don't know if we're going to bring back Christopher Herndon. With Tariq Macklin's versatility and just his playmaking ability, I don't know if we should bring him back. And to be honest, I would rather put my money somewhere else, knowing that we have Macklin, who we just drafted. He is a dynamic rookie. He is exactly the same mold as Christopher Herndon. To be honest with you, he has pretty much the same speed, good catching ability. Everything's good with Tariq Macklin. And to be honest, I'm not very, high on re-signing the tight end out of Miami. But I think that, he is going to be a guy that's interesting. And obviously, it's always good to have multiple tight ends. But if you don't need to pay one, then why do it? Now, this draft is very, very deep. Now, in Season 1, I think that the draft class was very top-heavy, but this one is very, very deep at quarterback. So I want to highlight that before getting into the prospects here, as this episode will be dedicated to looking at all of them. Henry Anderson is interesting. You saw last game he had a 3-sack game when Quentin Williams went down. That's interesting because I am looking to evaluate him even more. Now, BJ Hill, I have floated around the idea of moving him to nose tackle, which I've done, but then we have Fadakasi who backs him up, and the thing about BJ Hill is that I think he can move back over to defensive end and maybe even replace Henry Anderson. He's a younger and cheaper option. I think that he could do it. Now, let's get into these top prospects in this draft, and let's start at quarterback, then move to every other position. Now, George Jenkins is a consensus number 1 overall pick, but there's an interesting question mark in this draft. It's really, is he? He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He won multiple awards at Clemson. He is a dynamic runner of the football, but in the national championship, he came up small versus the eventual national champions, the Wisconsin State Whitetails. Now, this draft class will have the Whitetails season 6 and 7, and then the Rivercats season 5. So you will see a blend of all those guys here in this draft. But let's talk about the guy he went up against, and that's Wisconsin State legend Justin DiRoberto. Probably one of the most poised quarterbacks and most dynamic as far as making throws to all parts of the field. He is interesting. Now, there is a chance that DiRoberto could go number 1 overall, but a lot of scouts are just enamored with George Jenkins' athleticism and just his potential overall. But if there's any sure bet, like right now, if you want a guy that is going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft and in the NFL and for years to come, for the next decade, it's DiRoberto. I mean, you can't go wrong. Look at all these throws. I mean, he's making them to all parts of the field. He can stretch every part of the field and make every throw. Then there's the wild card. Chance Tyree ran a triple option at Texas A&M, but this guy is just explosive. Now, the question mark is, can he throw the football? He did throw the ball well at Texas A&M, but he didn't have to throw the ball 30 times a game. He didn't have to throw the ball 40 times. He used his legs a lot. But when he did throw, he showed some very good ability. He can throw to all fields, but really his legs are what carries him, and he is a dynamic runner of the football. And quite honestly, if he really wanted to, he could play running back and still be one of the best running backs in this draft. Then there's the intriguing physical guy, Ethan Brown out of Metropolis. Now, Metropolis was known for running the football, particularly with Roy Toth, who's coming out in next year's draft class, and Mike Rooney. But the thing that Ethan Brown brought to the table was consistency. He was just consistent throwing the football, and people are really happy about the system that he was in. It's a true pro-style quarterback system, and people are reminded of Big Ben coming out of college. Maybe that's him. He can stand in the pocket. He's 6'5". He's got a great arm, and the accuracy is all there. A lot of people are saying that he could end up being the best quarterback in this class altogether. Let's keep moving down the line and check out Alfred Miller out of Marquette. Now, he had a decent career. He wasn't great, but I think that he could be a guy that if you develop him the right way, put him in the right system, he could flourish. Now, I think that he would be, if we put him in last year's draft class, he could be the number 3 quarterback selected. I think he has that talent. Obviously not as good as the first 4 in this year's class, but I think that he can make all throws. He shows that he can win, and he's been a 3-year starter in college, so that should really speak volumes for him. Now, the next quarterback being evaluated in this draft is Bryant Simmons. Now, out of Wisconsin, he went from Wisconsin State to Wisconsin. He has some very good, intriguing wins, and that's the thing. He has some big-time wins on his resume. He upset number 1 Ohio State at home, and he showed that he can make all throws. It may not be, pretty at all times, but he can make all the throws. You can see the dump off pass to the running back there, and look at this deep pass to a wide open guy, though, but down the sideline. And Wisconsin ended up steamrolling Ohio State. Now, the last guy on this list is Gunnar Johnson. Gunnar Johnson is the smallest quarterback. He is only 5'11", and that's with shoes on, so I think I might be being a little generous there. He's about 5'10", 5'9", but 5'11" just about with shoes on. Now, here's the thing. Gunnar Johnson can be a developmental quarterback for a team. I don't know if he's going to start even in his first few years in the NFL, but he's a guy that could be a pretty good backup, and if you have him on your team, I don't think he's a bad option at all. I think he's proven that he can win as well, and he can make all throws. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be always accurate, but he can do what he can do, and I think that I really like him, and he's a guy that is dynamic, so maybe a developmental quarterback, he is an option. Now let's move over to running back, and this class isn't as top-heavy as next year's class. It's not as deep, but this class has Robbie Richardson, the greatest running back to grace this channel, and that is not even an exaggeration. Robbie Richardson in the bowl game ran for over close to 400 yards, had 6 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is dynamic. He won the Heisman Trophy as a sophomore, running for 2,400 yards. He is a dynamic player. He doesn't need great blocking. He just needs a little bit of room, and he can take it the distance. I mean, he makes you miss. He has excellent vision. He can break tackles. I mean, what can't he do? He can catch screen passes. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run big dudes over. I mean, this guy is dynamic. I mean, literally, look at this vision. He cuts back. Look at that. I mean, that is just insane vision. Robbie Richardson is literally the greatest player, gonna probably even be in any draft class that we will have in this series. Now, the second best running back in this class I have pegged is Adam Murphy from the Whitetails. He is a power back, and honestly, this guy is a bruiser. And who am I going to compare him to? I can't compare him to Derrick Henry because I think that Derrick Henry is a little faster, but Adam Murphy is a power back, a true one, and he's going to be interesting. Now, Clarence Martindale is probably the third best back. I would say he's probably going to be a backup back in the NFL, but you never know. He had a decent career with Alabama. He had pretty good numbers, but what is his talent looking like? I'm not really sure if he is going to be a great running back, but he's an option. Now, the reason why we're looking at running backs is because Le'Veon Bell is going into a contract year next year, not this coming year. So we will need to think about just the future of the backfield. We have LaMichael Pirine. Maybe a guy we can look at here is Bam Cameron, only 5'6", maybe 5'5", but he can get through the holes. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went in the first round to the Chiefs. So, I mean, small running backs could be in. So let's move over to receiver. Now, the best receiver in this draft is Chuck Woods. as far as projection goes, that is. Last time we saw Chuck Woods, he caught a Hail Mary pass and sent the Whitetails home with a loss. And they were the number 8 team in the country at that point. And Chuck Woods is a dynamic receiver. He can run all the routes. He is spectacular at catching the football. And I think that he is going to be good. But who's the best route runner? It's no doubt Xavier Storm. One of the most prolific careers we've seen on this channel. He was the best receiver for the Whitetails, arguably over Marlon Yarbrough. He broke all of Marlon Yarbrough's records, and he was great. And you put him in the slot, he's going to be one of those best slot guys you will see in the league. And I see shades of Jamison Crowder plus. I mean, Jamison Crowder runs great routes, but Xavier Storm is a different type of athlete. I think that he will be dynamic at the next level. Now, we don't really need tight end, but if we're letting go of Chris Herndon in the offseason, we definitely need to visit that position. And Bryce Greer is there. He's a pass-catching tight end. He can line up on the outside versus your best cornerback, and he can come down with balls. I'm not really sure how good of a blocker he is going to be at the next level, but if you need a good blocker, how about Xavier Gonzalvo? He was a great tight end for the Rivercats, but he can block as well. He played football and basketball for the St. Louis Rivercats. He's a guy that can go up and get it. He's got great size, good speed. I think he's going to be dynamic at the next level. I can honestly see him as one of those guys that you will eventually say he's a top 5 tight end in the league. Now let's move over to defense, where we look at Malik King out of Missouri State, actually St. Louis State, but it's Missouri State here in this game. And he was good. He was pretty good. I wouldn't say that he is great, but he is a pretty good defensive end. If you need one in the 2nd or 3rd round, I think he will be available. I guess we'll have to see how far he slips. Now, the best defensive player in the draft is no other than Victor Dimitronkos. Literally one of the best careers, one of the best years, I should say, 1 year at the Whitetails I've ever seen. And even on defense on my channel, I mean, the guy had pretty much one of the greatest seasons of maybe college football history. I mean, you talk about defensively, he had 4 interceptions. He had sacks to go with it. He was a game breaker. He is 6'5". He towers over everybody. He forces fumbles. He gets after the quarterback. I mean, he can do everything. And he's going to be an interesting guy there in the 1st round. I'm interested to see if he can go in the top 5, to be honest. Now, the next guy we're looking at is another one-year wonder, and it was Odin Blue. Odin Blue had a very good season. He's not a bad player, but can he keep it up? I mean, can 1 year really suffice him going in the 1st round? I'm not sure, but he was the linebacker of the year and one of the best defensive players in the Rivercats series in season 5. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know where he will go. A team will be very lucky to have him. Is he better than Javon Warren of last year? I'm not sure, because Javon Warren was a dynamic playmaker. And I think that Odin Blue at 5'9" is a little undersized, but he has a ton of potential. Now let's move over to defensive back, and I look at safety Nathan Beaver. Do we need strong safety? No. But I do want to keep tabs on where he's going to go. He also played quarterback for the Whitetails for a little bit. He was recruited as a quarterback coming out of high school, but then moved over to the defensive side of the ball, where he played safety, and he was good. He made plays all over the field. Interceptions, forced fumbled. Here's his best game versus Maryland, where he had 2 interceptions, a forced fumble, and 2 sacks. He is a very good player. Now, let's talk about the highest rated cornerback, because it still seems like that's an issue of concern for us. And it seems like, we might have to go after cornerback in this draft. And we're looking at Marquise Gentry. Now, Gentry is an interesting guy. He definitely has some very terrible hands. I mean, he's dropped so many picks in his career. Here's a game versus Northwestern where he had so many chances, and he just could not come up with one. But he is awesome in coverage. He basically reads receivers like a book. I mean, he is just an awesome cover guy. And if we need a guy, he's going to be projected in the top 5. I don't know how we get up that high, because it looks like we're off to a great start. But who's going to be available maybe in the later parts of the 1st round? How about Bryant Britt, who had a pretty decorated career at the Rivercats? He is very, very good, and I am looking forward to seeing what he can do at the next level. Now, this class is interesting. I think it's very, very heavy as far as quarterback goes. And obviously we have some defensive guys like Nathan Beaver, like Brian Britt, like Odin Blue, and Victor Dimitrankos, who are all good. But I guess we'll have to see, who's going to be the best player that is going to be available, because there might be quite a bit, because the run on quarterbacks is going to be interesting, and this draft could end up being one of those drafts that we find a great defensive player late in the first round. It could definitely happen. So that will do it for the top draft prospects here in season 2. There are obviously more that I did not go over, but I wanted to highlight just the top ones at a few positions that we should be looking out for. Now, Tariq Macklin has an upgrade coming off of a game where he was very, very good, and I think that this guy is going to be a dynamic player. Man, is he special. I can't wait to see what he develops into. Denzel Mims has an upgrade. He's going to go up to 77 overall, and he is a physical guy. He's got the speed. He's got the ability. Now all he needs is that route running to get up, but it's going up. It's progressing, and I like what I see from this kid. So that's going to do it here, and the big question going into this draft, who's going to go number 1? Will it be Justin DiRoberto? Will it be George Jenkins? I think it's a guarantee to be one of those two guys. And does Robbie Richardson make it into the top 3? There is a chance. There is a big chance. Now, next year's draft is the big running back draft, where you have Roy Toth, J.J. Hollinson, Lorenzo Collier. You have other guys like Justin Parrish. I mean, it is a deep, deep draft. So I'm excited for that draft. Also, this one's going to be very quarterback friendly. So a lot of teams are going to find their franchise quarterback here in this draft. So hit subscribe, hit that like button. Next episode, we will go up against the Dolphins and see if we can get our first winning streak of this series. So stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
I've been working hard for a minute. The ones who don't deserve it seem to be the ones that get it. The ones who speak the truth never get the recognition, but the ones that act foolish seem to get all the attention. It don't matter though. Yeah.